My name's Ian Thorne. I'm chair of the Friends of the Marden Valley, and I'm also a local councillor for my sins. I've obviously been very sinful at some point. Thank you so much for joining us. I chaired the discussion we had on Marden Valley, its history and its ecology, and I also part of the audience for the discussion around trees, discussion around, not trees, around birds and so forth, and reptiles, I think. So I'm hoping this will be an equally fascinating discussion. We're talking about river quality and water quality, which is a major issue, of course, subject, I think, of recently of a private member's bill. And I think we've got two excellent speakers, and I think we're going to start, if we may, with Zoe Hancock, who's from the Bristol Avon Bristol Avon and I can't read my own handwriting, Zoe.
Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership. Catchment,
it was the word catchment I was struggling with. Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership. And so I think we'll listen to Zoe and then we'll take questions at the end of Zoe's presentation. So Zoe, fire away, we're keen to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you this evening. Hopefully I'll be able to give you a bit of an insight into the work that the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership is delivering across the catchment, and mainly the organisations we work with to help improve the water environment. The first slide, I thought it would just be helpful to clarify what the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership is and what we do, and the role of Wessex Water in that, because I think it can be quite confusing to many of the external partners. So the purpose of the Catchment Partnership is to work with lots of different organisations within the catchment and to help coordinate all of the different work that's going on individually and facilitate that work to help improve the water environment. There's lots of individual organisations doing lots of great work, but I think we all recognise that by working together we can achieve more. And I think just to clarify, Wessex Water is one of many organisations in the catchment who are supporting this approach, and they support my role and also a few other roles which I'll touch on in the future. But it's they see themselves very much as one of a large group of organisations, and the Catchment Partnership is an independent voluntary partnership, and my role is external facing. So I'm not your classic Wessex Water employee who's out fixing pipes. I'm very much employed to work with all of the external partners across the whole of the Bristol Avon Catchment. So I thought it might be interesting as well, I work very closely with 3 other people, and the actual team who help facilitate the Catchment Partnership is quite small. So there's myself, Zoe Hancock, I'm the Catchment Coordinator, and I work closely with Siobhan Lamb, who recently joined us, and Siobhan's doing some great work helping me put these slides together as one example. We work closely with Richard Cresswell. He is the independent chair of the partnership, and he is ex-regional director of the Environment Agency in the Southwest. So when he retired, he retired about 5 years ago, and he brings a lot of experience to the partnership, which I think a lot of the partners really value. We also work closely with Matt Pang, who is employed by the Environment Agency, and he is their equivalent of my position. He's another catchment coordinator, and we do very similar roles, working with a lot of external partners and building relationships. So that's just a little insight into the kind of small team. The other kind of misconception sometimes is that the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership has a big delivery team behind it, and we're out doing projects. We're a very small team, and the delivery happens through all of our partner organisations like the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust, and Simon, I'm sure, will touch on many of the projects that he's delivering with his team across the catchment later on for you. So just building on that, I think it's kind of interesting to see the organisations we do work with and who's involved. The Catchment Partnership in the Bristol Avon is currently co-hosted by 2 organisations. So at the top, you've got Wessex Water and the West of England Rural Network. Previously, the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust helped to co-host the partnership, which was really helpful. And the steering group is really where Siobhan, myself and Richard look to for guidance on what the Catchment Partnership should be addressing and how we move forward. And you'll see that Wessex Water is just one of about 16 different organisations that provide that steer. So we meet 4 times a year. We've got both water companies, so Wessex Water and Bristol Water. We've got both wildlife trusts, the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust and Avon Wildlife Trust, and quite a few of the charity organisations, the NGOs. So FWAG, the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust, the NFU, and really crucially, we also have the Environment Agency in Natural England sitting on there in a more regulatory role. And we also have the 5 unitary authorities. And I think that's quite a challenge because many catchments have 1 or 2 unitary authorities, but we have 5 that we try and engage with and work in partnership with. So that's quite a challenge. And there's also a large array of supporting partners we work with. I haven't captured everyone on this slide. It's very hard to do that. So apologies if anyone's missing on there, but these are some of the organisations and partnerships that we work with across the catchment.
Come on.
So just to clarify the area,
Sorry, can I just stop you for a second? Could people please be polite enough to turn off their mic so that we can all hear? I think Robert said we were hearing about what people were having for dinner, which is really fascinating, I know, but can people please show some politeness and turn off your mic? So what I'm hearing is really fascinating from Zoe, and I'm sure everybody else wants. I sound like a school teacher now, don't I? But I think we all want to hear what Zoe's got to say. Zoe, continue, and everybody else will be suitably quiet, I hope.
Thank you. No, it's easily done, isn't it? So I just thought I'd mention the catchment boundary that we work within, and the Bristol Avon starts up near Malmesbury up in Wiltshire, and it flows down largely through the rural kind of headwaters, and then it comes into Chippenham and down through the West Wiltshire towns like Melksham and Trowbridge, Bradford-on-Avon, and then as it flows downstream, you're heading more into the more urbanised sections of Bath and Salford and Keynsham, down through Bristol, obviously heavily populated, and then out into the Severn Estuary through Avonmouth. But it's worth kind of noting that within our catchment, we've also been grouped in with the North Somerset levels and moors. So we've got the Congressbury Yeo and the Landjo and all the ditch and rein system down there, which is a really important habitat. Lots of coastal grazing marsh and peatlands down there. And we've also got the Little Avon and the Lower Severn Vale, which again, not many people actually kind of know much about that area, but it's a really important ecosystem. So how do we work in partnership? This is quite a busy slide, and I think I don't mind that in a way. I don't like putting too many words on a slide often, but it kind of starts to represent how challenging it is to work in partnership sometimes, because there's so many different stakeholders and people to engage with. So if we start in the middle of the slide, there's the steering group, and I've kind of gone through the organisations that sit on that steering group and provide the steer for myself and Siobhan and Richard on the direction of the partnership. The 2 key boxes I want to draw your attention to are the pale blue boxes below the steering group. So there's the working groups and then there's the partnership projects. And I think that's the real engine room of the partnership. So since I started doing this role about 5 years ago for the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership, and it was about a similar time Wessex Water offered to co-host the partnership as well. There were lots of projects around the catchment, but they weren't very strategically aligned, and then partnerships were being quite opportunistic. And I think in the last 5 years, through working through partnership, we've actually managed to get a strong list of partnership projects across the catchment. And as an example, on that partnership projects list, the top one, the Water Space Partnership, that's actually a programme of projects. So it's taken a very evidence-based approach, looked at the issues along the River Avon through Bath and heading down through to Bristol now. And it's come up with lots of sub-projects underneath that. So I think there's over 40 sub-projects just under the Water Space Initiative that are being delivered. So the breadth of delivery in the catchment is huge through the partnership. There's also, I'd like to just point out that we do work with quite a few different groups and partnerships across the catchment. We recently set up an agricultural group with the West of England Nature Partnership, and the purpose of that was to try and bring the stakeholders that are dealing more with the landowners and farmers, like the NFU, the CLA, Duchy of Cornwall, etc., into the conversation more with the more environmental conservation organisations that we engage with through the Catchment Partnership. And I think that's been met with a lot of enthusiasm, which is really encouraging. And we have lots of discussions with green infrastructure groups, biodiversity net gain, nature recovery networks. There's a huge amount of policy and legislation and documents to influence. And we're basically the voice for the water environment. We're trying to get the profile of the water environment raised and the issues, and then how we can work together to improve it. And underneath the working groups and the partnership projects box are the local action groups and volunteer groups. And I think this is really important to me because there's so many strong friends of groups and partnership and local action groups across the catchment. And the work they do does underpin a lot of the work we're trying to achieve. And where possible, when they contact us, we try and put them in contact with the relevant partnership projects. And joining up with those is enhancing the effort in the catchments, which is great. I will just mention above the steering group, it's called the Catchment-Based Approach. I will touch on that in a slide coming up, but I just wanted to raise that's the kind of umbrella organisation that sits above all of the catchment partnerships in the country. So moving on, so the Catchment-Based Approach was set up by the government in about 2012, and they basically wanted each hydrological catchment in England to set their own catchment partnership up and come up with what they thought at ground level the issues were that needed addressing, and draft and complete a catchment plan and an action plan on how everybody was going to work together to address these issues moving forward. And I think the catchment-based approach kind of formed, there's a national steering group, and they work directly and lobby DEFRA and the Treasury to try and identify the ongoing funding and support that's required through the partnerships to keep delivering improvements. And they also quantify the benefits of working in partnership and basically advocate for the resources that's required moving forward. I've put a link in on this slide. The slides will be shared after this presentation, so you can go to the CABA website and find out a lot of information on there about all of the different work that's been delivered around England. And I think they very much focus on local action and group and benefits that can be delivered through local groups as well. So it might be worth a look at that one. The catchments in the Wessex region. So there's 4 catchment partnerships that function in the Wessex region, and I just thought it might be useful to talk you through to get some context about how the catchment partnerships are set up. So in the Bristol Avon, which is circled at the top, which is where we are, obviously Wessex Water and the West of England Rural Network co-host that partnership. Down in Somerset, which is the yellow catchment, the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, FWAG, they host the partnership down there, and they work with a very similar group of organisations to what we work with. Their issues are similar, but obviously their priorities are going to be different. And then you've got the Hampshire Avon, which is a pale green, and hopefully most of you know where the Hampshire Avon is. That is in South Wiltshire. And that catchment partnership is hosted by Rivers Trust. So that's the Wessex Chalk Streams Rivers Trust. And then down in Dorset, which is actually 3 hydrological catchments. So there's the Stour catchment, there's the Poole Harbour catchment, which drains into Poole Harbour, and then there's the dark green West Dorset coastal streams. All 3 of those are grouped into Dorset under the Dorset Catchment Partnerships, and that's co-hosted by Wessex Water again and the Dorset Wildlife Trust. So you can see that if you take a look across the country, there's lots of different organisations hosting the different catchment partnerships. And that's because at a local level, it depends on which organisation kind of puts their hand up and says, we see a real value to working in partnership. Yep, we're happy to put some resource into this and support it. The challenges that have been identified in the Bristol Avon catchment have been identified and continue to be identified. We published a catchment plan 5 years ago that's available on our website. And the issues are identified in a lot more detail in there, but I'll just give a very high level overview. Poor water quality is obviously one of the key issues that the partners are keen to address. Flooding, the top right picture there is a picture that we took. It's the footpath next to the River Avon in Bath. It kind of floods quite frequently in winter at that point. The third issue is around poor habitat quality. So it's declining species and ecology across our rivers and streams across the catchment. And also specifically poor connectivity, so the weirs and all of the obstructions for fish migration through the rivers. I'll let Simon from BART touch on that. He's specialised in that a lot more than me. Water resources and drought. Both water companies they write their water resource management plans on a 5-year cycle and work closely with the Environment Agency to look at the sensitive areas in the catchment. And there's plans drawn up to look specifically on that, which we try and join up with. Climate change is a big issue. Increasing development pressures and urbanisation are also a really big issue in our catchment. I think in the Wessex region we have the highest population, and we have a significant amount of urban area. And I think with that, with more people comes a greater demand for use of our rivers from a recreational point of view. And I think that's been a growing trend in the last few years, but the COVID pandemic has really accelerated that. People have been forced to stay in their local area and explore and see how they can use the river. And I think through the Catchment Partnership, we're really keen to increase people's understanding and knowledge and value of the river and enable them to access it in a safe and healthy way if we can. So I think all the partners are keen on understanding how we can do that better moving forward. So the talk was framed around the water quality challenges in the Bristol Avon Catchment. So I thought I'd add a few slides in to kind of capture this in a little bit more detail. And I thought I'd start with the kind of Water Framework Directive, really, because that is the EU, well, the current EU legislation that all of the EU members have signed up to meet. They want all of the water bodies that make up a catchment to meet good status, that's good condition, ecological condition, by 2027. So just coming back to this slide, this just basically shows that we've only got 13 water bodies out of the whole catchment that meet good status. So the large amount of the catchment is failing, and it's for many. I'll go into the reasons why in a second, but there's poor, which is anything that's not good fails basically. And I think what we're really looking for now is the environment bill that the current government are putting through Parliament. I think it keeps being delayed. There's a lot of things trying to go through Parliament right now, and we're really hoping that the government picks up the baton with this and keeps a really high level of protection and legislation for our rivers and streams, because we need that policy driver and that legislation to keep pushing forward and improving our rivers and streams moving forward. Just digging down a little bit more, the reasons for not achieving good. So there's lots of acronyms in our world. I'll try and not use them, but RNAGs are the reasons for not achieving good. And when the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership kind of really took up momentum back in 2015, the partners all sat around the table and they said, right, let's look at the data and evidence, let's make informed decisions about where we all want to work, where are we going to get the most benefit and deliver the most benefit for the water environment. And we produced an environmental services evidence review. There is a link at the bottom of that slide. When I share the slides, you'll be able to click on that. And we produced about over 50 maps. So it's for the first time, we're trying to collate and bring all of the evidence and data we knew about the different water issues into one place. And this is just one of the maps that we've taken a screenshot of, but it shows where, if there's a water body highlighted in red on that map, it shows it's probably failing for quite a few different reasons. And that gives you an indicator of what you need to address in that catchment as an example. And the map is actually based on 2016 data. So the EA update their data every 3-4 years. So they updated it in 2016 and then they updated it again in 2019. So the table is actually a bit more recent data. So that's based on 2019 data. And that shows that the two biggest kind of reasons for not achieving good, the top one is agriculture and rural land management. So there's 139 reasons for not achieving good. And that's largely due to sediment runoff coming off the fields, entering the watercourses, carrying orthophosphate in that soil into the rivers, causing eutrophication. And, the partnership and the partners like BART are working with landowners and farmers to try and, deliver more sustainable land management and buffer strips next to the rivers and streams, etc. So lots of nature-based solutions and interventions to try and reduce that impact. The second one is the water industry, hence why the water companies are very keen to work in partnership and look at how they can reduce their impact. And there's a huge amount of work that they're doing, and they're trying to collaborate through different ways to enhance that work. Also, it's worth noting there are lots of other contributors of pollution, like industrial and urban. So it's important that we don't just focus on, we try and look at all of the contributors and educate and raise awareness about that. So the two examples of working collaboratively through the partnership to improve water quality, the first one being around the water industry kind of challenge. So Wessex Water are currently working up some drainage and wastewater management plans. I've put a hyperlink in there, and that's a screenshot of the portal that's on their website, and you can access that and you can find out about the drainage strategies they're developing up, and they're monitoring the storm overflows. That's not what I deal with specifically, but I just thought I'd mention that they have been reaching out to the catchment partnerships, and they're asking for the partners' advice on where they should be focusing their efforts and trying to find those synergies and that added benefit of working in partnership, which is really encouraging. And from an agricultural point of view, where we're trying to work more collaboratively to improve water quality, you've got the partners like Wiltshire Wildlife Trust, FWAG, BART, Avon Wildlife Trust, Environment Agency, all funding projects around the catchment and implementing things like riparian buffer strips, tree planting to slow runoff, cover crops to reduce siltation in rivers. There's lots and lots of different measures going in. A lot more needs to be done, but I think it's heading in the right direction. So kind of just wrapping up that water quality section a bit, where can we find out more? I've put some links in here. There's the Environment Agency have a Catchment Data Explorer. We've got our Environment Services Evidence Review, and there's also the CABA resource online. You can also contact us and we'll try and link you up to the local partnership projects. So just touching on what do we actually do, we set some goals in the catchment plan 5 years ago, and they touch on 7 key kind of issues. I won't go through all of those in detail, but you can obviously read them. And one of them is around, goal 2 is about improved water and flood risk management. So that is directly looking at how we can improve water quality in the catchment. But things like goal 3, improving land management, sustainable agriculture, will also help improve water quality by keeping the soil on the fields. So, and improving wastewater management as well.
Jeff, you're in.
So basically, this is a map of where the big strategic projects are emerging in the catchment, and it does need updating, like it always needs updating. But you can see, like, the yellow one is the River 2 Partnership Project. That's where BART are leading on that project. And the dark green one is the River Froome Reconnected, where it's a joint project between South Gloucestershire Council and Bristol City Council, working with all the partners in that area. So there's lots of projects emerging around the catchment, which is really exciting. And this is just kind of a summary from about a year ago of some of the things that the partnership had collectively delivered. So we were trying to capture all of the great work the partners are delivering across the catchment and really advocate that back to all the other sectors to say, come on, we need to keep pushing with this and engaging with farmers and restoring river habitat and engaging with volunteers and citizen science, etc. So 2 case studies I just wanted to draw, one being in Wiltshire. I thought, whereas we're speaking to the Marden group, it'd be nice to hear about a project that's developing up in Wiltshire. This is Wiltshire Wildlife Trust, and they're working on the River Biss, which ends up flowing down through Trowbridge into the Avon. And they're looking at restoring and enhancing its habitat for wildlife, but also connecting with the communities and businesses, especially around Trowbridge with the river. It's part funded by Wessex Water through their partners biodiversity programme for the next 5 years. And previously the Catchment Partnership Fund, which I'll touch on in a second, has funded it as well. So it's great that this project's getting some momentum up now and starting to deliver. And the second project I just wanted to mention was the River Froome Reconnected, which is one that I highlighted on the map previously. This is a collaborative project where you've got lots of different organisations coming together. They've identified lots of opportunities and issues. They're applying for big funding grants to try and get some more resources and funding to deliver this work. And they've identified, developing a strong project pipeline of engaging with new developments, trying to get the river restoration incorporated within those, working on reconnected tributaries projects. BART and FWAG are looking at how they can work with farmers in the rural headwaters to help slow the flow through nature-based solutions. And the Froome Valley Walkway is an example of where you've got a public footpath that follows the Bristol Froome right from the source all the way up to the top, and they're looking to enhance that from a recreation, public access, health and wellbeing benefit point of view as well. So there's a diverse array of projects that are being worked up and funding's been sought to deliver those. So coming towards the end now, the Catchment Partnership Fund was set up by the Catchment Partnership about 5 years ago. And when Wessex took on the co-hosting of the partnership, they were very keen to try and make this a partnership that delivered. We didn't want it to just be a talking shop that talked about the issues in the catchment and then didn't actually crack on and do anything. We managed to get funding support from North Somerset Council, South Gloucestershire Council, Bristol City Council and Bristol Water and back and North East Somerset Council to put into a joint pot and ring fence that, and then we'd ask the partners to apply for funds to deliver improvements to the water environment. And so far we've managed to support over 22 projects across the catchment. We've granted over 125,000 to different projects and unlocked through that and a further 230,000. And it delivers a wide range of projects, a lot of feasibility development work that a lot of other funds won't support, river enhancement improvements, wetland habitat, farmer engagement and support. And it started supporting the Bristol Avon Water Blitz, and the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust have taken on that, which is great. And that's been delivered annually now, I think, for over 5 years. So it's a really exciting engagement project that is giving us an insight into the water quality levels across the catchment. In the recent phase, with the 4 projects with the partnership fund supported with the River Chew eDNA analysis trial that Simon's delivering through the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust, that's a really, really interesting project looking at the species distribution of fish up the River Chew. And Avon Wildlife Trust got some money to look at a bat project, how bats use waterways down in the Gordena Valley in North Somerset Levels and Moors. We granted some funding to a Friends of Group down in Clevedon on the Landio, and they're looking at nitrate and phosphate monitoring project. And we also granted some funding to the Reconnected Tributaries project up in the river from Reconnected. So you can see the range of projects that we're trying to give some seed funding and support to, and hopefully they can grow from there. I've mentioned that we work with a lot of different partnerships. We're trying to influence policy, and we're trying to get the water environment incorporated in lots of different ways. We do a lot of consultation responses, and it's about finding that added benefit of everybody coming together and trying to influence big strategies so we can unlock more funding into the partnership projects and enable the partners to deliver more. And that's an ongoing challenge for us. I think basically kind of my last slide really is just looking at challenges moving forward for the next 5 years, carry on delivering those projects with multiple benefit outcomes, with ongoing need to increase our evidence base and understanding of all the issues in the catchment. And on top of that, we've got to learn how to adapt and respond to the climate change challenge facing us all. A big challenge in this catchment is trying to unlock funding and diversify the current funding streams, and that need for more project development and feasibility. We need to be in an informed position. We need to understand what's required before you can actually deliver that. And hopefully through the Catchment Partnership Fund and improving communications, we can all collectively get there. So final slide really is just, we have a website. We send out a monthly e-newsletter now. Siobhan's really taken that on, and you can subscribe through that link. We'll send the slides out afterwards. Yeah, I hope you found that interesting, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Zoe, thank you very much. I found that really fascinating. I'm kind of a newcomer to all these sorts of issues, and so actually everything you said I wasn't, shamefully perhaps, wasn't aware of. So this is very, very helpful. And hopefully everybody will subscribe to the newsletter so that we can keep ourselves up to speed. I'm going to ask Zoe if you can take your slides down, because I know what will happen next. Lots of people want to ask questions and I won't be able to see anybody. So I'm going to suggest if people want to ask questions, I've got 2 pages of wonderful people's faces plus some blank screens. If you'd like to ask a question, just wave your hand. Don't worry about the technology, but just wave your hand. Somebody's going to wait. I've got loads of questions, but I'm just wanting other people to come in. Nobody's waving their hand at all, unless Robert's. Thank you, Robert. Robert McNaughton's waving his hand has saved me. So, Robert, off you go.
I'm so interested in the importance of water to the government. What kind of priority do you think it has for the government to upgrade our rivers, look after it, try and get the pollution out of them, and to cherish them and look after them?
That's a good question. I think I'm also interested. I think there's a lot of talk from the current government about protecting the environment, and the Environment Bill is, they've captured water quality in that as a key issue they want to address. So it's written down in policy that they want to protect that. It's just the challenge is going to be how much they then follow through with funding to actually deliver that, and the resources, because I think being part of the EU helped to unlock a lot of different funding streams, and those aren't going to be available to us moving forward necessarily. So we're going to have to look to other areas to get that funding, or hope the UK government continue to support that. But it's not just down to the government, it's down to all the different organisations that have an impact on the water environment. And it's things like the unitary authorities recognising that, everything they do will probably have an impact on the water environment in some way with new planning developments, and it's building in sustainable development and sustainable water use into everything we do. It has to just underpin that, really. It's a vital resource. And if we don't have a healthy ecosystem, then there'll be a lot of knock-on impacts from that.
Thank you, Zoe. Andy Chester is using the funny hand device. So I'm going to ask Andy to ask his question, please.
Hi, yeah, I've got the funny hand sorted. I need to work out how to take it off now, don't I? There we are, I've lowered it. So a practical question, and I think there's probably a whole science behind what I'm about to ask, but just to sort of get a flavour of it. If you're interested in planting woodland to contribute to flood management, thinking about the river landscape, where is the best place to plant woodland?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of data and evidence to look at to understand that. I'll probably pass you over to Simon actually, because Bart have developed up a really good tree strategy, and it's about putting the right tree in the right place, and that's really important because if you get it right, then it can help slow the flow. If you get it wrong, it could actually make it worse. And I think I'll let Simon pick that one up actually. Do you want to come in, Simon?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Zoe. Yeah, good question, Andy. It's certainly something that we've been looking at over the last sort of 12 months in more detail. And what we've developed is a two-strand approach. So we've worked with a local modelling company, so basically a company that specialises in flood risk, and we've developed a model for different catchments that show where the hydrology is potentially contributing towards your flood risk at different peaks. And what we've done is we've looked at field scale level. So we've mapped each field. So which fields are the ones that are contributing the most surface water and are causing the flood risk downstream. We've mapped all of that, and then we've actually gone out into the field. We've ground truthed it. So we've understood what the geology is like, what the land use is like. And then we've developed schemes where we've actually specifically engaged with the landowners, because we know that it's quite unrealistic in a lot of cases to just plant a whole field into woodland. So we've then compromised and built plans with the landowners to actually plant cross-slope woodlands. We looked at riparian buffer strips. We've looked at putting in attenuation features to complement those woodlands. So in effect, we've created smaller scale planting regimes within each specific pocket of land where the evidence puts us in the right position to be in. And we've taken this approach, and I think I'm going to touch on it a little bit on my slides, but we've taken this approach across the Chew Valley at the moment, and we've had good success with landowner engagement, and there's lots of people coming to us because they like seeing the maps. Having the evidence really helps. Rather than people say, go and speak to my neighbour, if you show them a map that says actually your neighbour isn't as effective, but you could do something quite wonderful just here, it opens up that conversation. So hopefully, Andy, that's helped to answer your question. Good stuff.
Thank you, Simon. Again, I'm looking for either electronic hands or I'm looking for even human hands waving at me. John Bennett's waving. John, fire away.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting. I got the wrong link for some reason. So I'm not sure if this is a relevant question to any of you, but when we're talking about human waste going into the rivers, is there anything that can be done about stopping these sort of floods that wash human waste into the rivers? Is there a way of upgrading the sewage facilities or some way of perhaps dealing with them differently? I understand we traditionally just get the microbes working on them and then that's us sorted. Is there a way now with like anaerobic digestion and stuff like that, we could actually make better use of our poo basically and wastewater?
Hi, John. Yeah, I'll basically, that's not what I specialise in. I did cover that the Wessex Water are developing up their drainage water management plans. So they are looking at what they need to do across the catchment. Well, they used to be called sewage treatment works, but they're now called water recycling centres. So I'm trying to get on point with the current wording on that. But as far as I'm aware, all of the water recycling centres are quite rigorous with their treatment processes, and we get regulated on the final effluent that goes out from all that's been treated through all of those sewage treatment works. I think you might be referring to combined sewer overflows, which they were designed when you get very high rainfall events and the sewage treatment works are at capacity and they can't go anywhere else. Instead of that sewage backfilling into people's houses, it was you know, the Environment Agency gave a permit to say, well, in those specific conditions, then yes, they can spill over. But they're all being, there's a monitoring program now from Wessex Water. So if you check out the link in the website, the slides that I send around for the drainage water management plans, you can see they're mapping all of the combined sewer overflows across the catchment. And I think by 2023, they're committing to monitoring all of them, because they didn't use there wasn't a requirement to monitor them all, but they're going to be monitoring them all to understand how often each one spills and trying to reduce that. So I think Wessex Water are very active on this front, and they're looking at all of the ways that they can minimise raw sewage entering the water.
Happy with that, John?
I'm happy that something's being done, yeah. But I mean, I was thinking also of, I mean, obviously, as you said, you can't answer the details on that because it's not your area. But I was thinking perhaps, you know, there's a possibility for energy production from poo for a start. But there's also, for example, on the Marden, we used to have 13 odd water mills on the Marden, and we still have some of the infrastructure, like the blocks and stuff and the channels there. I was wondering whether if we were to reinstate some of those, would that cause more problems than it's worth, or is there a possibility we could still generate some electricity from water on the Marden, for example?
I'm not sure about the mill question. I think, I mean, Simon might be in a more informed position than me, but with any renewable energy scheme that they're proposing on any section of the river now, it has to be rigorously tested and looking at the environmental impact for fish, or, you know, we try and get fish passage put into those to make sure it's not you know, blocking fish migration up the river. But also I think it comes down to cost benefit on most of them. Like if it's not cost beneficial to the energy generated from the mill, if that's not with the investment that's required to get that mill up and running, it would probably be my guess as to why they aren't being reinstated. Because it's a budget thing at the end of the day usually, but I'm not sure, because again, that isn't my speciality area. But Wessex are looking at lots of, they have the Avonmouth site, they have Genico, which is kind of arm of Wessex Water, and they're very big on looking at biomass and all the different ways that they're trying to use any waste products out of all of the different processes and reuse that and recycle that in ways. So they're always looking at more innovative ways to do that. And there's a lot of, there's actually a big wetland that's just been invested in up in the north of our catchment at Cromhall, where instead of treating with chemicals, they put the water through a series of wetlands, and then that actually helps clean the water out before it's put back into the rivers and streams. So there's a lot of work going on around the UK with all of the different water companies coming together to trial different approaches to having more renewable and recyclable approaches. So yeah, it's a really relevant question, and I think it's definitely going to be a growing area for the water industry moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, Zoe, thank you very much. And we're going to move on, but that's been so many questions we could ask, and I think there's an ongoing conversation with you and your colleagues.